Hi, everybody. Neil Malonsaw here. It's Monday afternoon. The markets have closed, and I thought I'd bring in Greg Fox, grain marketing specialist with the Louisiana Farm Bureau Marketing Association, and kind of talk about what happened today. And as you can see, you may be familiar with these markets and may not, but the markets soared higher. These are all double-digit gains across the board for the grain commodities, at least. And we see like a 54-cent gain for March soybeans, 38-cent gain for March corn, 67 cents for wheat, and Greg, I think we're going to start here because wheat is really the driver of the market, all due around the fact that Ukraine is the breadbasket for Europe, accounting for between like 13 to 17% of
That's
wheat
correct.
in the world.
Yep. Yeah, wheat is definitely the biggest driver. A lot of wheat export out of that region, the Black Sea region. You see a ton of wheat, and you see a lot of corn and some soybeans. But yes, wheat is the biggest driver out of that region. And with this conflict going on, you're not going to see any exports right now out of that area. And their winter wheat crop is in danger of being destroyed, damaged. And then some of their other wheat crops, spring wheats that they need to get planted later down the road, is that going to happen? So like you said, they ship a lot of wheat to that region, the European region. And with the conflict, the uncertainty, I think, is why we saw some of that drop on Friday and then this recovery. With sanctions right now against Russia, that kind of spiked these markets back up because that could be potentially one less exporter out there in the market that's going to be shipping grain to different places. And if Ukraine can't ship any wheat to anybody, they're going to be looking to somebody who has wheat, the U.S., Australia. Some of those places are going to see a bigger export run on their wheat than what they typically see. And so these markets are reacting accordingly.
Now, if this conflict gets resolved quickly, could these markets reverse in fortune? I mean, I know a lot of this is what if and speculation, but it seems like at least Russia, for the time being, is going to be out of these world markets for the sanctions, and it's a big question mark right now for Ukraine.
Yeah, I think you could see where these markets reverse. A lot of that could be knee-jerk reactions or, oh, great, it's settled, and then these markets kind of drop, but then you kind of assess the situation and say, okay, well, we're going to need X amount of wheat. They're not going to be able to ship it. Ukraine had some damage. They got to fix some port facilities. So then you see these markets kind of creep back up to say, okay, well, we got to buy wheat some other places. Other places are going to have to supply us, and so the market would correct itself. But yeah, I don't see it happening in a short term. So I think these wheat prices could potentially hang on, but that's the one thing with wheat. It's available 365 somewhere in the world, so we could see some more fluctuation in these prices.
But right now, it is buoying up these other prices right now for beans and corn. But another thing right now, of course, is dryness in Brazil. Is that correct?
That is correct. We've seen that for a long time now, so you're seeing a large planted number in Brazil, one of the largest ever in South America, but with some of the dryness that they saw early in the planting season and then later on, we've seen their production numbers drop each report. So we'll wait on March 9th to see the next WASDA report, what it's going to say on their numbers. But if that number keeps shrinking, then you're going to see where wheat's going to be more available out of the U.S. for places like China, where they can't get it out of South America. And so that should support our bean prices.
WASDA, by the way, is the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimate, and so that report comes out periodically throughout the season. Another thing that we're thinking of, though, is the prospective plantings report that's going to be out here, and that kind of ties into what I want to talk about here. There's a big discrepancy in these markets, $2 between near-term contract beans and new crop beans, and then about $1 or so, roughly, between new crop corn and old crop corn. So to give you a basics really quickly, the March contracts are the old crop. That's from 2021 here, or what's being traded right now. And that's those farmers, those few farmers who have grain still in the bin here in the United States. That's who that applies to. The other ones are for later on. Is that correct?
That is correct.
For the new crop coming in.
Stuff. So you're looking for Louisiana, September corn is our new crop. You get into the Midwest, December would be their new crop corn.
Right.
And then November's new crop for everybody on soybeans.
How long do these prices have to stick around for us to close the gap between those numbers, do you think?
It's going to take some time. You typically see an inverse in these markets. So you go from a higher market to a lower market, you see that inverse. Sometimes it's not quite this spread that we're seeing, but you just see such a value right now in old crop soybeans or corn. So if you're still sitting on that, there's a big value in that right now, simply because of the lack of it. And you see in barges shipped downriver, so anything left is of higher value. But it'll take some time to correct that. We have a few months to go through We're going to roll out a March soon into May future, so that's going to be a little bit lower of a futures price as well. So there's still some time to see those numbers correct themselves.
And I'd mentioned prospective planning's report. That's what farmers might be planning this coming spring. We're already kind of in the thick of it for Louisiana. I know for the Midwest, they're still a ways off on making some of their decisions. But what are you hearing in this difference between the two? And I know that March and beans right now are the big two in Louisiana for, it's decide what to plant, with corn having a little bit more input cost and beans having a little more risk or with less input.
From the farmers that we spoke to, it varies. Some guys that are just in rotation years, they're going to plant less corn. Some guys that have bins are more willing to plant the same amount of corn or even add to their corn acres. But they're kind of weighing the price to cost for both corn and soybeans. You're going to have to put those inputs into both. So, what's their bottom line going to be is what we're hearing. But I think for Louisiana, less corn. Especially in the southern areas, and potentially more soybeans. But in the Midwest, I don't think you're going to see the big swing that a lot of folks are talking about. Some of the earlier numbers they're estimating right now, you're looking at 91, 92 million acres on corn and 88, 89 million acres on soybeans. So corn is still king, so what it looks like.
With these prices being what they are, if they hang around this level, is that enough to offset some of the higher input costs for the fuel and fertilizer we're seeing right now?
I think so. You're seeing some pretty strong basis numbers, what the elevators are offering to go to those locations. So for soybeans, for example, with the basis levels, you're at $15. So I think it helps, and I think it offsets. So you could be looking at similar to what we saw last year at $10 beans, the same income, potentially with these high fertilizer prices and fuel prices. That's the other thing I think folks are kind of forgetting, is that cost of diesel, the cost of fuel to get it to those port facilities.
Well, there's always, with every year, there's a lot of these factors that go into it. Greg Fox, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we'll keep you posted as the more information we get as the spring planning rolls along.